Good evening. The May 24th Prescott Valley Board of Adjustment is now called to order. For the information of the public, the Board of Adjustment is an impartial body made up of residents of the town of Prescott Valley who volunteer their time and efforts and are guided by state and local rules and regulations. When you address the board, please state your name and address for the record. Only one person may speak at a time, and all remarks must be addressed to the board as a whole. I will now note for the record all town employees who are present. Fernando Gonzalez, Code Enforcement Supervisor; Carrie Campbell, Administrative Support; Stephen Schrake, Town Attorney. May I ask the Secretary to call the roll, please?
Chairperson Shimon.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Johnson.
Here.
Member Van Boning.
Here.
Member Kunish.
Here.
Member King.
Here.
I ask now for any material changes or modifications to the minutes of the November 23rd, 2020 meeting. Hearing none offered, I will call for a motion to approve the minutes as submitted, followed by a second and a vice call vote.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second.
Second.
Member King. Member Kunish.
Yes.
Member Van Boning.
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Johnson.
Yes.
Chairperson Shimon.
Yes. I am asking now for any and all announcements from the staff or board members.
I'd just like to introduce new member Brianna King and welcome her aboard. Hope we give her a warm welcome. And she would like to be called Bree instead of Brianna. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando.
Any announcements from board members? Hearing none, I will read into the record the first item on the agenda. UP 21001, upon the application of Ben Snyder, owner of Antelope Village LLC, a request for a use permit per section 1311020 C1F of the Town of Prescott Valley zoning ordinance in order to expand and operate a sales office. The subject property is located at 7400 East Pronghorn Ranch Parkway, Prescott Valley, Arizona, APN 10301-160L. I would ask Mr. Gonzalez to give the staff presentation, please.
Thank you. The subject property is located in the Pronghorn subdivision and is zoned RS Residential Services. On January 22nd, 2001, a use permit UP 01-002 was applied for and granted for the temporary sales office at the Pronghorn Ranch. The stipulations for that are on your Exhibit 1. Those are the stipulations in regards to the issuance of the zoning of the use permit. Town Code Section 1321-140B provides for a temporary use of a sales office within a subdivision being subdivided for sale for individual lots. However, the specific limits of the duration of the use permit is predicated on 2 years from the date of issue when 80% of the lots are sold, or a 2-year period, whichever comes first. On January the 22nd, 2003, a new application, UP 03002, was received for the operation of a construction and information center. Upon review, we found that all of the conditions of the original use permit had been adhered to, all except for 2. And the reason the 2 were not adhered to is because of the 6-period time frame that was given on number 2, and number 8 had not come up, so at this time they weren't required. On February the 24th, 2003, the use permit UP 0302 was approved by the board with the additional 2 conditions, that all stipulations and conditions of the original use permit UPO 1002 be complied with during the duration of UPO 3-002, and that the use permit be granted for the 2-year period. The applicant is requesting an expansion of the existing use permit, or the use of the sales office, with an additional 12 by 60 modular building at this time. A conversation with Boyd Robertson, he is our Deputy Public Works Director, actually stated that condition 2 and 8 of the original permit will be required and necessary at this time in order to accommodate the growth in that area in the Pronghorn Ranch. The Town Code Section 1321-140B provides for the temporary use, as stated before, allows the use for a 2-year period or for 80%, or if 80% of the lots are sold, whatever is first. Due to the facts stated, staff is recommending the board approve UP 21-001 with the following conditions. That the condition in 2 and 8 of the original use permit UPO 1-002 be complied with, that all of the conditions of the original use permit UPO 1-00 remain in compliance, and that all site development standards as required be, actually we put that on there prior to occupancy, but since they already are occupying, we'd like to amend that portion and say within 6 months. And that the use permit be granted for a 2-year period from this date issuing, or unless 80% of the lots being sold, whatever comes first. I'd like to tell the board that we did do a small study on the 80% of the lots to figure out where we were. We're pretty close. We're at maybe 76, 77% at this time, and that's why we're making sure that that gets in there, because we will recalculate at a 2-year period to find out where we are when we come back, or if they come back to pursue another use permit. So we'll recalculate the 80% to see where we're at, or if we believe that they're at 80%, we will at that time bring that forward, and then the use permit will go away. So just wanted to give you that information, because they are pretty close to that 80%. I actually wanted to add an additional stipulation. The only other thing that I would like to add is that any permits that would be required for the expansion be secured prior to occupancy of that section or portion. They will be building permits required for that, for the occupancy of the addition, not the existing. And that's all I have. If you have any other questions, it doesn't look like the applicant is here, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Fernando, I have a question. That the newly developed property there that have the streets and sewers in and everything,
Yes,
is that his property? Ben
I
Snyder?
believe so, yes.
So that's why this sales office is kind of being reopened?
It actually is open, yes. They're working out of it now,
Oh, they are, okay.
yes. And what brought this actually to the fruition was they wanted to expand it. And when they wanted to expand it, then when I took another look at it, we did have a tickler to give us some idea of, when the 2-year period, and of course that had come and gone. And we said, oh, you can't even operate until you get another use permit, and especially if you want to expand the use. So yes, they have that, and they have another section that they're subdividing now, another unit. I think it'll be the last unit.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from board members for Mr. Gonzalez?
I do have an additional question. I was looking at use permit UP 03-002. On page 2, it shows that the second condition that they had was that the use permit be granted until 80% of the lots in the development have been sold. So it looks like with that particular use permit, there was not the alternative between 2 years or 80% of the development, or whichever occurs first. Is that right?
That is correct. And to be honest, I don't understand why they wouldn't have put that on there. The section that I put on there is verbatim in the town code, and that the language in the code is specific to that.
Okay. And that's the question I had too. I was looking at this particular one, UP 21-001, with this use permit. It's not superseding UP 03-002. Is that right?
That is correct.
This is in addition to. And so the first thought I had in looking at this was, wouldn't it make more sense then to have those two in conformity, requiring 80% of the development be done, and not have that additional provision for the 2 years?
We can make that change. If you're comfortable doing that, that's not a problem. The only reason I put the 2 years in is just in case something happens, something slows down, time frames or something. But like I said, that's why we did the study, to find out how close we were to the 80%.
Okay. And that was the other question, too, with all the development going on. You certainly wonder how close they'll be at this point.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Thank you.
The applicant actually expressed that he believed he needed 5 years. Of course, we kind of differed on that. We agreed to disagree, because I believe they're a lot closer than 5 years.
Okay.
No other questions for Mr. Gonzalez? I will open this item to comment from the public, and hearing none, I bring the item back to the board for closing discussions. Board members?
I don't know, do we have to change that 2 years, or just leave it as is, or?
I think my thought is that given that UP 03002 is granted until 80% of the lots in the development have been sold, I think it would be more appropriate to have this particular use permit 21-001 be in conformity with that prior use permit of 80% as well. Then they will both expire at the same time.
Members?
Probably be over 2 years before 80% are sold anyway. Look like, I would think, because of the new development and the new housing, the new lots that he's developing.
It could be. It could be. It's just that what they have now is closer to the 80% than it would be.
Who calculates the 80%? I mean, you go out there every year and figure out 80%, or
No, we do that through the building process and what the plats are, because they plat all the parcels.
Right.
And then we go back and look at the building permits for those plats.
Okay.
And then county records as well will give us an indication if the lot wasn't built on, but it was sold, and if it transferred title.
So I don't have any problem with that change.
Fernando, will that be administrative? Will you do that, or is it necessary for us to make that?
It would be necessary for you to verbalize it, and then we'll go ahead and do it administrative once you do that. Once we do the minutes, we'll make that change. We just need the language.
If there's no further discussion, I would ask for a motion to include the provision that the board members suggested.
Yes, and my suggestion would be that the approval of this permit would be granted until 80% of the lots in the Pronghorn Ranch subdivision are sold.
And do I understand that you make that as a motion?
Yes.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
May we have a roll call vote?
Excuse me. Member King?
Yes.
Member Kunish?
Yes?
Member Van Boning?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Johnson?
Yes.
Chairperson Shimon?
Yes.
And I'd just like to clarify, that's the only change to that one, but all the other conditions are going to be in place, correct?
Yes, and there was also the condition that you had under number 3, all off-site improvements shall be in place prior to, instead of occupancy, will be within 6 months.
Perfect, yes.
I'd like to make a motion for that as well, based upon his recommendation on number 3.
We will hear the motion.
We would have to amend the first motion
Okay.
to include that. So
Okay.
if we could just vote to amend.
You will have to amend the first motion.
I move to amend the first motion as follows, that for staff recommendation number 3, all off-site improvements shall be in place within 6 months of approval of use permit UP 21-001.
Thank you. May we have a second to the amended motion?
I second it.
May we have a roll call?
Member King?
Yes.
Member Kunish?
Yes.
Member Van Boning?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Johnson?
Yes.
Chairperson Shimon?
Yes. Motion passes. UP 21001 has been approved by the Board of Adjustment. I'm going to ask, is there anyone who would like to make further comment? But seeing no one to make that comment, I would ask, since there's no further business, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? And a voice call vote, please.
Member King?
Yes.
Member Kunish?
Yes.
Member Van Boning?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Johnson?
Yes.
Chairperson Shimon?
Yes. The May 24th, 2021 meeting of the Prescott Valley Board of Adjustment is adjourned.